Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where you can be, belong, and become the very best version of yourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, whether you're on the couch, driving to work, wherever, thank you for being a part of what we do. Again, we think the Bible is filled with so much beauty, so much depth, and it's important, again, to understand who wrote it, why they wrote it, the culture, the context, all of it. This book was not meant for me in America as a non Jewish person. It wasn't meant for me, but I can pull so much beauty and depth from it when I look and take it responsibly. And so, wherever again you're joining us, thank you. As always, please consider donating. You'll see the links below and also subscribe. So, we've been moving through this series of Genesis. And again, we understand Genesis is a part of the Torah, right? The 5 books of the Old Testament. And so when these writers, when they're writing, they're not trying to write about their history. They're not writing history books, literal books. What they're doing is they're compiling all of the wisdom stories. They're combining all of the stories told around the campfires. And again, what's the main theme? The central point of it? It's always Pen Israel. It's Israel. Israel is found over and over again. And the point is to keep their identity. Who are we as Jews? Well, to understand who you are, you have to understand, again, your stories, your heroes, your wisdom voices, all of it. And so for Israel, the whole point of starting Torah in the first place is because 587 BC, the Babylonian Empire, again, they take Israel captive. They devour this tiny nation, just like the other nations they've conquered. And again, they bring them to Babylon. And again, they see all the other nations come together. These other nations who have all said, oh, well, you beat our God, so I guess we'll take your God. We'll take your culture. We'll take your beliefs. Israel says, I'm not going to do it. I will not assimilate. And so Israel, in order to remember who they are, they tell their stories. And again, it's interesting when you read their stories, it has an uncanny ability to almost run in the face of the Babylonian stories, right? And we looked at this in Genesis 1. Israel's God steps into the chaos, brings order. Babylon's God, Enuma Elish, again, steps into where there's some order and breaks things up, and out of the chaos brings forth man, right? But these are the gods of chaos versus the God of order. That's the idea here. And so understanding this, we understand over and over again, there are all these little jabs at the Empire of Babylon, jabs at Egypt, all of these different things when you understand the point of the stories. And so, again, Torah is written in response to the fear of assimilation. All these pieces brought together, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, all brought together to remind Israel, this is who we are, right? This is our identity. And so the metaphor, the poetry, the poetic musings, all of it there to remind Israel what it means to be Jewish, right? And so every character, every story, every metaphor, all a connection to what it means to be an Israelite. And so when you read about characters, understand it's Israel miniaturized, right? Through every telling. So we've been moving through the last couple of weeks, chapter 6. And so as a reminder, last week we discussed Noah, not Jonah yet, but Noah. We brought up Noah. Noah found favor in the eyes of God, right? Noah walks with God. The word Noah means to rest, right? The calm before the storm. Noah bears fruit everywhere he goes. There is majesty, beauty, breath. That's what his son's names meant, right? Everywhere he goes, he shares this. And so the question, of course, that we left off at, the question we should be asking for Israel after understanding what we did last week is this. How do we finally experience rest, right? Where does rest come from? How do we get there, right? How do we get to the place where we move away from captivity? We move through the chaos. How do we do it? How do we move through the chaos in order to find order? And the answer is you build an ark. Right? You build an ark. So let me read to you the verses 14 through 16. And we're going to understand the deeper symbolism, the metaphor here, and exactly what Israel was intending when you read the story about Noah and the ark. So here we go. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with compartments, and you shall chalk it both inside and outside with pitch. This is important, right? And this is the size you shall make it: 300 cubits the length of the ark, 50 cubits its breadth, 30 cubits its heights. You shall make a skylight for the ark because, hey, you need some vitamin D. And a cubit you shall finish it on the top, and the entrance of the ark you shall place it in its side. You shall make it with the bottom compartments, second story, and third story compartments, right? So interesting, but what's the point, right? So let me go into a little deeper. If you are wanting to understand how Jews, again, the people who wrote these pieces, how they view it, the point of it, then you might want to look at Jewish writings first, right? You might want to see what their scholars have to say first before we make a bunch of assumptions about what it is. So here's what one scholar says. The ancients were not asking the question, how did all this happen? The ancients were asking why, right? Like any of us in a catastrophe, why did this happen? Why was it allowed? And so this is where any flood story, by the way, there are hundreds of flood stories. Every empire has them. Interesting thing though about flood stories is that they didn't all happen at the same time, right? They're mentioning different floods, different times, because here's the thing. Many cultures throughout history have experienced floods, right? And they've told these oral stories of why did this happen? Right? Because for people then, why did the gods do this? That was their go-to. The gods must be angry. What are they angry about? Well, here's the story, right? You get it. Flood stories. So we have the story of Gilgamesh. And get this, there were stories much older than the story of Noah. Right? Again, Israel is a pretty new empire, a pretty new nation on the scene. And so when you look at Babylon, Assyria, all these other older empires, they actually, before Jonah ever ends up on the scene, there's a story about Gilgamesh. And watch this now. Interestingly enough, Gilgamesh, the story goes like this. God's going to punish the world, but Gilgamesh is saved by a Noah kind of like figure. Not Noah, but a figure very similar to Noah, who builds a boat. And watch this now. He places his animals inside of it. Yeah, kind of fascinating, right? There's a story there, right? Babylon's story. There's another story, an even older story, Thrasis. This story goes that mankind is making too much noise. And so because mankind is making so much noise, their gods needed to silence mankind. They were like, just shut up. We need to shut them up. And so mankind, though, escapes from the wrath of these gods because they build a boat. Do you see this? Yeah, they build a boat, and the boat saves them from the wrath of their gods who try to silence them. Again, a much, much older story than the story of Noah. Yeah, in a different region, it all is really fascinating. They were not asking how, they were asking why. Yeah. And so, watch this. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. Now, here's the thing about the ark. Many people have a lot of ideas about the ark. Where's the ark? Is the ark important? Do we need to build another ark? Ark, right? Here's the thing. Ark, this word it's very important to understand what the word means in the first place, right? So ark is tabah in the Hebrew. And this meant a box-shaped thing, a chest. And in the majority of cases, tabah meant a basket. Right? Interesting. It meant a basket. So I want you to think of Moses. Yeah, think about Moses for a second. Moses, another character who has this messianic kind of character who's going to bring Israel out of captivity. Where's Moses placed? Yeah, think about that. He's placed in a basket. And the word, of course, is tabah. It's the same word used as ark. Yeah. So look at this. She took and made for Moses a tabah, a basket. And big surprise, what does she cover it in? Well, she covers it in pitch. You can see how they build their messianic archetype stories. Yeah, Israel, in order for them to survive, in order for them to make it through the chaos, They have to be placed in something. The tar is put there. Again, it's interesting. The tar is going to protect them from the different cycles, the brokenness, all that. It's going to protect them from the depths of the water. Again, water always symbolized chaos for them, right? It's going to protect them from the chaos, the brokenness that they are journeying, navigating through. That's the deeper picture here. And the ark, the basket, the box-shaped thing, here's the thing about it, it's going to deliver them through it. Yeah, so think about this, a nation who is going through chaos, a nation that is going through brokenness, wreckage, all of that. The promise here is that this messianic archetype, these people, they're going to have a moment of rest. And in that moment of rest, there's going to be something that's going to deliver them away from the chaos. That's the promise. It's the storyboard over and over for Israel. Yeah, it's almost a retelling, if you think about it, a retelling of the Genesis 1 and 2 story, right? Their God steps into the chaos, brings order. Once again, their God steps into the chaos and brings order. Let me keep going. Notice this quote, again, fascinating quote. For Israel, when facing deep chaos and potential destruction, there was a deep belief that soon a messianic figure would come in time to bring peace and restore their nation. Think about this. When you look at the New Testament with Jesus, right? What is Jesus in? Yeah, he's in this box-shaped thing. And when you look at the word there for manger, and when you go back, you'll understand it's a direct reference to, once again, what other messianic archetype figures are held in before the character comes and brings them freedom. Right? Again, it all fits together because it's the same people who are writing the same stories, and it makes absolute sense. Israel, your time's coming. The messianic figure is coming. We're going to get through the storm. That is the beauty of the text. One of my favorite producers and writers, Michael Arndt. Michael Arndt, he's done many different films. He did Little Miss Sunshine, I think Toy Story 3, and obviously Star Wars, and a bunch of others. Just famous screenwriter. And so Michael Arndt, he has this idea. He says that in order for great films to be great, there need to be a couple things. And one of them is this, and there's kind of an order to it. He says, in order for the climax to be super effective, at the peak of the tension, there must be a moment of despair where it seems that the hero cannot possibly win. And so we get this, right? There's that moment, I put the little picture of Darth Vader there at the bottom. There's this moment in the Star Wars movies where Luke Skywalker, he's about to shoot down the Death Star that's going to destroy all these innocent people. He's about to shoot it down. And before he does, Darth Vader's ship goes right behind him. And Darth Vader gets him in his sight, and he's about to shoot Luke Skywalker down. And everyone is on the edge of their seat, and they're like, no, no, this is gonna go really poorly for our hero. Oh no, right? Hopelessness, despair. It's gonna end badly, right? Our hero is going to fall. That's the point. And for an epic story to be epic, there must be a moment of despair, he says, right? But then, after the moment of despair, right? After this moment that we all have felt, right? This moment of hopelessness, he says, in order for a good story to be a good story, he says this, there must be a decisive act. And notice what he says, but then there is the decisive act which leads to a reversal of stakes. The underdog is suddenly victorious over the villain and experiences victory right before all hope seems gone. And so again, the hero steps back into the narrative heroically, right? The ship carries him into the exact point in which he's going to bring the rest of the cast and the audience into victory over evil, right? That's the moment. And again, this is Noah, right? It's Moses. It's Jesus, it's Luke Skywalker, it's this moment, it's the messianic archetype in the decisive act where the tables are completely tipped upside down. the moment of victory over evil. This is it. And the truth be told, the reason that good fiction is because it mimics reality. And I think for many of us in our lives, we get this, right? There are those decisive moments, but there are also those hopeless moments. And we had to experience the hopeless moment before we could experience the decisive role reversal, right? It really does make it sweeter, doesn't it? That moment of beauty overcoming, it's sweet because you experienced some sour before that, didn't you? Yeah. And so, lastly, I want to end with this because I found it so fascinating. The more I dig into all of these ancient stories, the deeper it gets, especially the Hebrew writings. They're packed with so much metaphor. I've heard people ask, well, let me try to take my calculator out and, calculate these different numbers. And maybe if I do that, I'll find the winning lotto number. I don't know. People do crazy things with numbers, right? But for the Hebrews, there were certain interesting points that when you study some of their writing and some of their oral traditions, you'll get why they do certain things that they do, why certain numbers symbolically come up over and over again. Not to like make future predictions or whatever, but to give you more text, more texture, right, to the story. So why the 3 layers? Well, I think you're going to enjoy this. Layer 1. First off, Jewish commentator here again. The 3 levels of the ark to a Hebrew is a reminder of the 3 levels of Jewish narrative. This is so good. Watch this now. The bottom level. The bottom level is where the waste would have been, right? It is like the foul desecration of all that's good. That's the idea here. It's the low of the low deck. That's the first layer, right? And Israel has been there, haven't they? Second layer, the middle was for animal dwellings, food sources, sustenance, right? Third layer, and I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Third layer, the top level was for life, where rain's collected, hope is found. The dove comes back in, shows them that, hey, there is a land just coming up ahead. There's hope. The promise is going to be fulfilled. That's what happens on the top layer. And so catch this now, because this story, this cycle, right, over and over and over again, in every story we read, we start down in captivity, brokenness, absolute crap, right? Literal there. And then we move up. The hero arrives. There's life that's beginning to form. And as we go up, peace is finally restored. It is the heroic moment. And I want to let you know this. No matter what kind of despair you're feeling, whatever kind of brokenness you're feeling, if you are in the pits of absolute crap right now, if you're feeling hopeless, here's what the Jewish narrative over and over and over again reminds its people in the middle of their captivity. Hold on a little bit longer, because hope is just around the corner. Hope is going to pull you through. You are going to find victory. The decisive act is coming. The hero is just around the corner to bring you victory. It's coming. Beautiful, right? Yeah, so what do we do with this? How do we take it home? Well, one of my favorite writers, Ram Dass, he actually says this. I'm going to read you this quote. It's one of my favorites. It's not totally connected with what I'm going to share with you, but it's so good, so I'm going to share it with you anyways. At some point, you learn to have less certainty about what the future holds, of who you'll be when you grow up, or how it will all come out. Because when I look at my life now, there is nothing. 25 years, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, everything I thought about who I was and how it will all come out had no similarity at all to the way it is. Who I am now hardly recognizes who that was. Who he was at Harvard would have hospitalized who I am now, and who I am now feels great compassion for who I was then. I doubt we'd be much friends. We would have very little business with one another. He would be very judging of me, which would be very poignant. So I've learned since I've gone through so many transformations of who I know myself to be and how it is that I must assume that those will continue. There's no reason to assume they won't, although they may not, because I can't know that. So I'm planning to continue to be who I am forever. I love that. I'm not planning to continue to be who I am forever. It will continue changing. I like this idea. We will continue growing, changing, shifting. Right? We will go from this to this to this and probably right back down again, right? We'll go through these cycles over and over and over again. But the beauty of Ram Dass teaching is over and over again, hold on to hope when you're surrounded in chaos. And so here are some of the ideas he gives when you are finding yourself feeling hopelessness. He says this: first, think about what you gain from being hopeless. I found this really interesting, especially throughout what all we've experienced here in the States. It's just been interesting. It's been a feeling of hopelessness, right? What do you gain from feeling hopeless? He says basically consider whether you might be gaining something by remaining hopeless, because most of the time you'll realize you won't. You don't gain anything from wallowing in hopelessness. Most of the time, the answer you ask yourself, am I going to gain anything from feeling hopeless? The answer is no. So why sit in it? Interesting, right? Number 2, learn to develop hope. I love this idea. Learn to develop hope. Consider way things could go well. Develop a hopeful view of the world, of reality, of the future. Think of ways, it may not be great here, but you know what? I'm going to develop a hopeful mentality that in the future, this and this and this might happen. Be hopeful. You're going to put your energy somewhere. Why not be hopeful? Number 3, engage in problem solving. I like this. You actually become a solution rather than just a naysayer. Spend time thinking about potential solutions to the problem, right? Brainstorm ideas, keep them in mind. That's what he says. You don't even necessarily need to have good ideas. Just brainstorming, thinking of different ways. Just see if you can come up with as many strategies as possible. That's the idea here. Engage in problem solving. Last one, develop a plan. It says develop a plan. After you've developed ideas, find a way that you're going to actually create a plan, create steps, begin living the thing now. If you don't have a plan, it's just going to stay up here. Create a plan how you're going to engage this now, hopefully, right? As long as we have life, we keep love and hope alive. And for Israel, over and over and over again, this message rings true. Hold on to hope. The decisive act is coming, right? The ark will sustain us through until we get to dry land. That's the beauty, the idea here. The messianic figure will deliver us. And sometimes you are the messianic figure, right? In your own stories. Sometimes we need each other, right? This is all part of what it means to be human. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a heavy one. So fun. Please consider donating ethos-church.org/donate. Give that tax-deductible donation, especially here during tax season. It's so helpful to continue doing what we do. Also, if you want to engage with us live, we do this twice a month. We come together the 1st and the 3rd of every month. We do these live discussions, and it's so fun. So many different perspectives from all over the country. I'd love to have you join us. Let me know if you're interested. TonyWerfel@gmail.com. And lastly, please hit that subscribe button. Share these videos with other people. We'd love to have you continue helping us grow these beautiful understandings of how to view this book. Everyone, take care. Can't wait to see you next week.